And greetings. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. We enjoyed a long spring break weekend, but it is great to be back with you. I am Steve Deace. He's Todd Erzin. He's Aaron McIntyre. We are brought to you by our friends over at Preborn. Let's keep the generosity going. Let's see more stories like Paige. She found out she was pregnant, didn't feel like she could afford a child. The father threatened to make her have an abortion. But when her mother found out, she introduced her to a Preborn network clinic. And at the clinic, she was given the support and resources that she needed to help her choose life. And the father even started attending parenting classes with her. And now they're raising a beautiful son together. Your tax-deductible donation helped create that testimony. We've done this with the Preborn tens of thousands of times the last few years. Let's keep it going. Make a tax-deductible donation today. An ultrasound that could maybe prick the conscience of a mom like a mom to be like Paige costs just $28. There's all kinds of other things they do, prenatal care, postnatal care as well. All of that also is free to the mom and her baby, although none of it is actually free. And that's where you and I come in. If you want to make that tax-deductible donation today, go to preborn.com/Steve. Preborn.com/Steve. Again, preborn.com/Steve. Or you can donate securely where they have a 100% charity rating at Preborn. You can do it another way as well. Dial pound 250, say the keyword baby on your mobile phone. All right, coming up on today's show, we have a jam-packed show. We have been trying for months to get the schedule synced up to get Naomi Wolf back on the show. She came out with a book late last fall, a compilation of all the research her team and Steve Bannon's team did into the Pfizer documents. We're finally, I hope, we're going to pray, we're going to have that conversation later today on the program. We're going to spend a good deal of time before then, though. We're going to spend about an hour on the show talking about what I think is Coup 3.0. And if you look back at the first Trump administration, there were two coup attempts that were devised to stillborn the Trump presidency. The first was Russia collusion, and then the second was the scamdemic. And Russia collusion was about nullifying the results of the 2016 election. And the scamdemic was about certifying the results they wanted of the 2020 election. And just as there could be no accommodation with these coup attempts, and in the first term, the one thing Bill Barr did, the only thing that he did, was end the Russia collusion hoax. After 3 years of damage to the Trump presidency, nearly 3 years of damage to the Trump presidency. And then the scamdemic came about a year later. So it was, did you guys pick up on that, by the way? It was March of 19 when Bill Barr finally put an end to the independent counsel and the Russia collusion hoax. And then it was March of 2020 when the scamdemic arrived. And what did we say all that year? If President Trump does not fire Fauci and get back control of his administration, he won't win re-election. Sadly, we were correct. Well, there is a third coup attempt now, a judicial coup. And this one, frankly, has the hallmarks of the other two. The Russia collusion hoax used the unelected intelligence community as a conduit to feed false narratives to the media. The scamdemic used the unelected healthcare bureaucracy to do the exact same thing. You notice a trend here? What's the operative term in both of those descriptions there?
Unelected.
Unelected. That's right. Unelected. Coup 3.0 is the judicial coup from the follow me now. Uns tice, he times a Haiti. All right? 3 times is a trend. Buckwheat. The unelected judges. And they are now the ones feeding the content to enemy media and to the masses. And in my view, this is the most dangerous canard of them all because it's the one we've made the most peace with wrongly. And you can look back over the last half century virtually until Obamacare. From the dawn of the welfare state until Obamacare, the most heinous things the left did to this country all came through the courts. And that's not a coincidence. Things that when they went up as issues in ballot referendums couldn't even win in places like California. Just imposed by fiat via unelected judges. And so now the judges are here to stillborn the Trump presidency, nullify the results. What the judges are here to do is what the intelligence community and the healthcare bureaucracy did separately. They're going for the doubleheader here. We're going to nullify the 2024 election. We're not even going to wait to see if we can win in 2028 when we can get our own guy in there to just rewrite Trump's executive orders like Biden did 10 minutes into the presidency in 2017, in 2021. We're just going to make those things don't even take effect ever. You don't ever feel the positive impact of them. We're going to stop them right now. And so just as without shutting down the independent counsel was never going to stop the Russia collusion hoax, and without shutting down Fauci was never going to stop the scamdemic from wrecking that election cycle, I'm telling you right now, the only way out here is through. There will have to be some confrontation with the courts for the full merit of your vote in the 2024 election to be relevant. Beyond the euphoria of election night to the first few weeks of the Trump presidency, which have been great. But the honeymoon period is now over. And now this becomes hand-to-hand combat. We've gone as far as we can go with shock and awe. You don't ever win wars with just air support. Eventually, you got to put boots on the ground and fight the enemy where they are. This is where the enemy is. This is where the fight's going to have to go. And as I said on the show last week, as far as I know, there's only one place in America where there has ever been a successful fight fought against judicial tyranny. And it's what we did in Iowa with the retention election that made history 15 years ago. So we're going to talk about that at the bottom of the hour with Bob Vander Plaats. And then I'm going to spend a good deal of time next hour laying out some of the lessons we learned from that victorious fight that I would urge the Trump administration to emulate, because this is the fight of his presidency. This is the COVID. This is the Russia collusion of this presidency. The Democratic Party is in disarray. It was in disarray in 2017, too. We forget that. Remember, there were the fewest Democrats in elected office in the United States of America in federal, state, and local offices than there had been since the Great Depression when Trump took office in January of 2017. We forget that. They'd been routed as a party. All the stuff that we're saying now looks like they're in trouble. Where are they going to go? We've said, go rewind all of our shows and go back to January of 2017 and February of 2017, and all the same stuff was said. But there remained a permanent unelected bureaucracy there to be a stalwart, to use a pun here, a bulwark for the deep state, to hold the line until the Democratic Party got its act together. The first bulwark, the intelligence community. The second bulwark, the healthcare bureaucracy. The same game plan is playing out right now. Democrats we're going to recycle Bernie Sanders. I mean, the guy you had to do a coup against in 2020 to prevent from winning, we're going to recycle him. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like, we couldn't possibly be that fortunate. An even more grating version of Kamala Harris. But before we get to 2028 and beyond, you got to win this fight right here. And the courts are doing exactly what Fauci and all these fake intelligence officials who then later lied about whether Hunter Biden's laptop was real. The judges are doing the exact same thing. They're here to stillborn the Trump presidency. It's a coup to bide the Democratic Party time to get its act together. And it will work like the other two worked until they were confronted. One of them was Russia collusion. The other one wasn't. And we suffered that indignity well into the term of the next guy who got into power because of it. So we're going to talk a lot about this over the course of the next hour on this show. But first, we're going to talk about Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the DOE, is DOA.
We're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs, and this is a very popular thing to do, but much more importantly, it's a common sense thing to do.
Since we last spoke, President Trump signed an executive order de facto dismantling the Department of Education. Some duties of the current Department of Education, like student loans, will be shifted to other government agencies. Attorney General Pam Bondi has announced the arrest of 3 Tesla vandals, characterizing them as domestic terrorists. All 3 used or attempted to use incendiary devices to burn Tesla cars or charging stations and come from Oregon, Colorado, and South Carolina. Another new trend to try to stick it to Tesla owners is this one.
We are the ones we've been waiting for.
Whoops, wrong clip. For those of you listening, a large man sticks his hand down his butt crack, takes his hand out, and starts smearing it on a Tesla. Lovely. Is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez running for president? You're darn tootin' she is.
We need a Democratic Party that fights.
Pope Francis is out of the hospital after a 5-week stay battling double pneumonia. He was seen in public for the first time on Sunday since his admission. He's 88 years old. In the UK, a National Health Services employee who was charged with fraud for creating over 1,000 fake COVID vaccine cards is avoiding jail time after it was revealed in court that NHS didn't even investigate the matter for unclear reasons. 28-year-old Kieran Sylvester created the fake vaccine cards for profit and had never previously run into trouble with the law. An ongoing debate online and in certain legislatures for years now has been whether or not to ban SNAP benefits from being used to buy snacks like soda and junk food. Well, randomly over the weekend, some large right-wing influencer accounts started posting pretty much the exact same message. Welfare recipients should be able to buy soda with their unearned benefits. Some of these accounts actually do pretty decent work, by the way, as news aggregators or pertinent news boosters, but I'm sure it was just totally random and they all got on the exact same message at the exact same time this weekend. DoorDash has partnered with a finance company to introduce a program that would allow customers to finance DoorDash restaurant orders. And now a Marxist Madness update. Moving on to the Soviet 16. For Hamas defeated screaming at children there in the Soviet 16. They will be taking on Shoot 'em, who narrowly defeated Mental Disorder 53-46. Dick Levine, the 2 seed, moves on over Mamala, and they'll be taking on Don't Tell, who also had a narrow win over Save Poor and Vote Democrat. Over in the diversity region, Rights Come From Where springs the 8-1 upset over the Marsh family. They'll be taking on Governor Weirdmer, the 5 seed, triumphing over Richard Dawkins, Man of Faith. Mobile Abortions, the 2 seed, will be taking on Whoops Pedophilia, both of whom had resounding victories in the first round. In the Equity region, Garbage will be taking on the 4 seed, We Demand Aid. The National Cathedral Witch springs the 7-2 upset over Man Enough. Will be taking on the 6 seed, High Tech Trafficking, who beat the 3 seed, Girls Gone Primal. And finally, in the Inclusion region, the number 1 seed there, the Gynocracy, won their matchup over Stop Killing Us. Will be taking on Roots Part 2 with a surprising easy victory over Roots Part 1. Second matchup, moving on into the Soviet 16. Haitians over Sun. The 2 seed will be taking on the 3 seed, Trans Uterus. Look for the voting thread later today at Steve Day Show on X. And finally, at the NCAA wrestling tournament, Oklahoma State heavyweight wrestler Wyatt Hendrickson, who's also a 2nd lieutenant in the Air Force, pulled off the biggest upset in college wrestling history, defeating Gabe Steveson for the crown this year, while his commander-in-chief watched in person.
Captain America. Captain America.
Rob, I can't believe it.
My jaw's on the floor.
He did it.
Hey. Shut up. Shut up. Everybody shut up. Shut up, Rob.
I'm glad that he was the last.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Let's actually start with reaction to the Marxist Madness bracket and what these results may tell us about where even our own audience is. Okay. Aaron, can you throw the bracket back up there by any chance?
Yep.
All right. So I'm not surprised to see Dick Levine holding firm. Not surprised to see that. I mean, he is a kind of a symbol. I mean, he essentially is the, Brutus the Buckeye, Sparty, the leprechaun doing push-ups every time Notre Dame scores a touchdown. I mean, he's basically the mascot for the Spirit of the Age. Fair? So I'm not surprised to see him holding firm. I called this, I wasn't right about everything, but I did call this on Selection Monday last week, to watch out for the 8th seed in that region there, where the rights come from where MSNBC literally did a segment saying there was never a country called America. It never actually existed, right? And the fact that it toppled one of the most viral clips of last year in the Marsh family, I take that as a positive sign. I take that at least, well, maybe it's just a sign of who our audience is. I don't know if this speaks entirely for the right in general. Whatever sliver of that audience belongs to us, I think you can see that with that MSNBC segment is way more of a threat than the Marsh family, even the annoyance of the Marsh family, right? And I will tell you, I think there are maybe some other places that you would go on the right where those results would have been reversed. Fair? Where the viralness of that Marsh family clip would take precedence over the deeper substance of what MSNBC was alluding.
For sure.
Okay. So what, again, I think it was perfect for our audience, that 8-1 upset there, but the Weirdmer thing hits both of those. That matchup, Todd, is going to be really difficult because the Weirdmer thing hits both. It's got crossover in the viral camp with just how creepy that was. What wasn't it? It was administering communion, if I remember right, to another woman, right?
With Doritos.
Okay, yeah,
yes.
With Doritos, yeah. I mean, so that's got all kinds of viral capability, right? But substantively, the amount of sacrilege there would, that as a 5 seed has both, if you're more into some of the more viral sectors of the right, but maybe some of the more substantive sectors where we likely hang out and roll, that Weirdmer clip has a crossover appeal in both of those arenas. And so I think rights come from where could be in for a real fight. I mean, I think the Weirdmer clip is like if Vivek Ramaswamy got elected governor of Ohio, okay, there would be crossover appeal to both the viral community and the substantive community. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I will be very fascinated about the results of that singular one in particular. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that Weirdmer, I was on that track of thinking regarding her game when we talked about it as well. I think, you're describing a Calipari versus two former Kentucky coaches. Pitino, yeah, rivalry. I mean, that's how much planning and scheming there will be in that match. And one thing I'm encouraged by, I wasn't so sure about, both mobile abortions and the high-tech trafficking. With all of tranny madness, you wonder, and the failures of the life issue, you kind of wonder if people have just kind of stagnated on their resolve. And I think it's a credit to Steve, where you, on this issue, you're not March Madness just during March Madness. You've been March Madness ever since the show started because of your personal backstory. I really think that's a credit to you. And you, as you mentioned, the type of listeners within the conservative sphere, they're never going to sell out on those issues, on fighting for babies until the bitter end. So it's encouraging that those two teams advanced through.
Based on the Soviet 16 who was left, I think Dick Levine is going to win the entire thing. But I would not be surprised if Weirdmer did. Okay? And they would end up facing each other in the Fatal Four. Looking at this bracket, you have a pick. I'm gonna say it's going to be Dick Levine is going to win the whole thing.
Oof. I don't feel as strongly about Dick Levine. Tell me why.
Because he's an easy symbol for he is the embodiment of the second word of the title of this event, madness. He is the embodiment of it. He is the singular embodiment of it. There are morsels of it throughout the bracket. Just like just like that MSNBC clip is a singular embodiment of the word Marxist. We're just going to completely undo your history and feed you agitprop like your country never existed, right? Okay. But the Dick Levine is madness incarnate. I mean, he is a symbol of everything that we are up against right now as a people.
By that logic, wouldn't you go for transuterus then? Wants to be the first man to have a uterus transplant and the first man to have an abortion?
Correct, but Dick was already platformed. Dick was given the highest platform in the world.
Greater pedigree.
The White House, yes. Yeah.
I think this might be one of those years where the semifinal is really the final.
Weirdmer versus maybe.
Yeah.
The Weirdmer Rights from Where winner in the Fatal Four
Correct.
versus Dick Levine.
Yeah,
and that happens
like
a lot,
that.
that happens a lot, right. Okay. Every time I start to feel some optimism, and I have been more tempted by optimism in the last few months than I have been in the entirety of my career, probably. Okay. By the way, if just because I'm not Hosanna in the highest every minute of the day doesn't mean I'm blackpilling. I'm not blackpilling at all. I mean, there's somewhere between Hosanna in the highest and Vanta Black. There's a spectrum there. Fair? Okay. All right. So I'm not even tempted. I'm not tempted to be Vanta Black at the moment at all. Okay. If I most days I'm like, some form of normalcy is making a comeback. We'll see how it goes. Okay. But every time I'm tempted to cross into the optimism part of the spectrum, a story comes out that just punches you right there between the legs, man, and makes you think, at least that's how I feel. And I've been very tempted by optimism for the last few months. And then I saw particularly with what's happening with the young men, with every data set you could possibly look for in the culture right now. That's the most, and it's by the way, it is diverse. It does, I mean, the trends with white young men are ahead of black and Hispanic young men, but the overall trend line in all of these groups among young men is the same, and it's the most positive thing happening in the culture right now, in my view. That's why I'm so concerned about because much of this is happening outside of the faith. Much of it is, what's happening with the young men is an instinctive revolt against generational genocide of one half of the traits of the species, masculinity.
They're
right?
rejecting something, but they're not really aspiring to something.
That's the first step.
Yeah,
right? That's the first step. Repentance isn't conversion, but you can't have a conversion without a repentance, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Agreed.
But here's the thing. I mean, that's why I'm constantly on the church. Are you now ready? These guys are showing up. They're seeking. They're looking. The instincts are kicking in. Are you guys ready to now take this from repentance to conversion? And the answer is no, they are not. So that's what my big focus is for me right now. But every time I start to get optimistic, I see something like DoorDash, you can finance now. Really? Hey man, I can't afford that $10.99 combo at Culver's. Can I get that on installments? There ought to be an executive order by Trump against that by noon today. Can't happen. Some things, because of what's culturally at stake, we just have to violate our own processes. Okay. Some things, because of what culturally what they affirm and will establish, we just have to say, hey, we'll get back to the process of small r Republican government. But first, we got to nip this heresy in the bud right here first. Sometimes you just got to punch Arius in the face, Nick. Right? Fair.
Oh, fair.
Sometimes, and we'll get back to a conclave and discussing treatises and theological codicils and the affirmative and dignified position. But first, I got to punch this dude in the face. Then we'll get back to it. Okay. This is one of those moments. This can't stand. Can't happen.
There's a story over the weekend as well that the Bidens want to get back into or stay in politics. Can I paint a picture of the future for you? The year is 2052. Joe Biden is running for president for the 11th time on a platform of forgiving DoorDash loans. Oh my God. It is wildly successful.
And Beef Supreme is his running mate.
Yes.
Yes. Pause whatever you're doing, because that's about to ruin the image and the styling we're trying to get used to. All right. That cannot happen. All right. Guys, if you find out your son ordered DoorDash on installments on behalf of America, call up some of your buddies. All right. Find a woodshed in a rural area and take him behind that. And his future wife and children will rise up one day and call you blessed. And that's not even tongue-in-cheek. Some things just can't be allowed to be. Some things we just have to nip it in the bud, and we don't have time for judicial review or legislative process. Okay? That's one of them. That cannot happen. That's an indignity that like what the scriptures say, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. That level of indignity shall not be suffered to live, and it must be stomped out with maximum prejudice. That cannot stand. It cannot stand.
But what if financing DoorDash is a blessing of liberty, Steve?
It is not a blessing of liberty. In fact, it is a sure sign your liberty is frickin' toast, okay? And it's not a coincidence, by the way, right at the time the young men are turning around, out of the bowels of hell comes DoorDash on the installment plan. Next thing you know, it'll be a porn bot, a sex robot in every pot, okay? No. And if that gets in, we'll find you. We will find you if you ever let that in your home. We will come, we will take your lampstand away, and then we will smack you upside the head with it. And then future generations will rise up and call you blessed. No, that cannot happen. Ever. Final thing is, over the weekend, I was bemused. Because when I take time off, because when we're working, man, I'm putting in 14-hour days. So when I take time off, I do my best to take time off. So I did my best most of this weekend to take as much time as I could, spend as much time with my grandbaby as I could, my wife as I could, watch as much college basketball as I could. We took the days off. I'm going to treat them as days off, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to work, then I should have just come to work, right? Okay. So I was kind of aware of what was going on, but I was completely bemused that for 2 days, this entire thing about whether or not SNAP benefits should cover soda or not, okay, sugary drinks like Coke and other things, blew my mind that this went on for 40, and I think I even sent you guys a text like, I cannot believe that this is the fight of our age. And then it dawned on me later that I kind of missed the point of the fight. And I'm going to say it here and not on X because I'm a coward and I don't want both sides to come at me. So I'm going to say it here to you in the audience instead. Okay, because that's a ratio. I don't have time to mute 4,000 people today, which is what the result of me saying this would be. It dawned on me why this was such a big thing. We have this grift core on the right that I think we've just kind of, those of us who have been on the right for a long time have just viewed this as, this is the sunk cost of MAGA, right? We've seen MAGA move the Republican Party further to the right than it's ever been, right? Okay. We're seeing MAGA take up culture war fights that traditional Republican Party wanted nothing to do with, right? There have been some benefits to this, right? Okay. Everything has trade-offs. The sunk cost is there's just going to be a permanent grifter class that's just the reality of it. Okay. Like you might meet a great guy and he chain smokes. All right. That's just a sunk cost, man. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So this is kind of the sunk cost. There's a Cousin Eddie faction of just grifters, okay, and we just have to put up with that in order to, enjoy the blessings of being among the Griswolds, okay? Well, the Maha people, they're not from our local and native ecosystem, and they have their own. And here's the thing, in my line of work, it's really hard to be successful and completely offend the grifter class because of the amount of people that they attract. I'm just telling you the truth, it is kind of hard. That's why I spend most of my time just ignoring it because it drives me insane and I would lose whatever morsel of audience I still have left by just lashing out at it. So I've just chosen to ignore it because it gets in the way of me plowing my row. I'd just be distracted by it all the time. Well, the Maha people are like, yeah, we're not doing that. And this was the first time we have seen the MAGA grifter class successfully pimp slapped. And I will be, people were deleting posts and I never don't even know how to spell soda. I don't know what it is. Okay. I will be fascinated to see how this proceeds in the future. Okay. Because the Maha people are like, yeah, we don't need you guys. We can make money and do this on our own without you. So your BS, we're calling it out. That'll be fascinating to see moving forward. Hey, if you're trying to jumpstart your health in 2025, Lumen can help. And you know, about 80% of resolutions fail by February. Well, we're now into late March. Beat the odds with Lumen. Improve your health. It's the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath, and on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, even workouts, sleep, even stress management. All you can do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning. You'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether it's burning mostly fat or carbs. It then gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on those measurements. And then you can breathe into it before and after your workouts and meals too, so that you constantly know what's going on with your body's metabolism in real time, because that is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. So take the next step in improving your health by going to Lumen, Lumen, lumen.me/Steve. That's lumen.me/Steve. You'll get 20% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/Steve for 20% off. Let's welcome in our good friend, Bob Vander Plaats. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
I'm blessed. Good to be back. Congratulations on your Wolverines again. Another run. Here we come.
I know this. We've been to, I think it is 7 straight Sweet 16s and tournaments we've been in with 3 different head coaches, in fact. So maybe we can retain one, or find a coach in John Beeline's case, or find a coach that's worthy of retaining, like Juwan Howard was not. So, but the next game we have against Auburn is tough, and it's the team I actually picked to win the tournament. So I'm trying to think. You guys, it's been a minute since your Hawkeyes have been in the Sweet 16, right?
Let's talk about what we're going to be talking about, Steve. But, you know, we are looking for a new head coach. Did the Drake coach?
He did. That was announced by your AD this morning. Yeah.
I think Ben McCollum will do a great job for the Iowa Hawkeyes.
I think he'll do. I think he's probably, and I don't mean this condescending, but it'll come across as such. It's the best hire Iowa could have made given the state of its current program. Okay.
And just to wrap up the basketball facts, I'm 93% on my bracket right now, but I have Michigan State winning it all.
Do you? I've not even looked. I was at 80% after round 1. I've not looked after round 2. I have Auburn winning it all. Are all your Final Four teams still intact?
Yeah, I think they're all playing yet.
Mine are too. All right. Let's get to what I think is become really, I think now, the tipping point defining moment of the Trump presidency. And you tell me if you think maybe I'm overreacting or not, because I see parallels between what's going on with the judges. And clear, I'll just say this. I mean, when we were going after judges in Iowa 15 years ago, Fox News was laughing at us.
Without question.
Okay, now I'm at the gym this morning in between lifts, and it's almost all Fox News is talking about. Is the judges and the impediment they are to the Trump administration. Now, here's the thing. No one wants to actually talk, though, about a solution. We want to kvetch. That's kind of what we do on the right. We're great at kvetching, but when we get to solutions, usually we get in the way of somebody's grift or fear or shibboleth. And so we just go back to permanent kvetching. But at least kvetching
about... And we do that better in the minority than in the majority.
Correct. But at least kvetching about the judges is a step up from what we have done, which is just flat out ankle grabbing to them for the last generation. All right. So I see parallels between Russia collusion and the scamdemic in Trump's first term and the judges in the second term. All right. So let's start there, because if I'm right, then I think a drastic course of action will be required. And if I'm not, then maybe not. All right. So in the first term, you had unelected intelligence community officials essentially serve as the bulwark against Trump's first election win. And they operated with the intent of nullifying the results of the 2016 election. And for 3 years, 2.5 years of the first 2.5 years of the Trump presidency, it worked. Until Bill Barr spent the entirety of whatever political capital he had left on shutting it down, then done nothing else as AG for the final year. That's all he did. But that one thing was important, okay? But notice it had to be stopped. Like the Office of Independent Counsel, or what I used to call back in those days the leakocracy for the media, wasn't going to stop itself. They weren't going to just shut down. They had to be stopped, right? They had to be shut down. The scamdemic, so if that was about nullifying the 2016 election, the scamdemic was about certifying the 2020 election with the results that the spirit of the age wanted. And how many times did we do that show that year, me screaming over and over again, you will have to fire Fauci and stop all of this, or you're going to lose the election, right?
I remember it well.
Okay. I think so again, unelected bureaucrats in the intelligence community, unelected officials and bureaucrats in the healthcare sector, unelected judicialcrats, judges in the judiciary. Same pattern. Give the Democratic Party time to regroup. It's scattered right now. It was in 2017 too. Okay. Give it time to regroup, figure out what its battle plan is, have these unelected permanent bureaucracies serve as a bulwark to stymie and disrupt the Trump administration's attempt to disrupt the system. Am I right or wrong?
You're exactly right. Matter of fact, they're operating off a common thesis too. What is the game plan to stop Trump? Because when he won in 2016, he wasn't supposed to win. So there comes all the Russia collusion stuff. How can we stop Trump? Because he's a dangerous person to our culture, to our way of living, to the American way of life, to the international community. They did that with the Russian collusion. You talked about it over and over again with Dr. Fauci that he is unelected. He doesn't hold these he's not de facto president now, but he seemed to be de facto president. So they did it with the scamdemic, the 2020 election, all the mail-in balloting. But now it comes to, Steve, a branch of government that you and I are all too familiar with, the unelected judges, of saying, how do we stop Trump now? Because he's dangerous. So the collusion didn't work, the scamdemic didn't work, but now how do we as judges stop Trump at all costs?
I think the judicial coup is even more dangerous,
without question,
than the other two I mentioned, because much of the last generation of the right, long before Donald Trump was a serious political brand or entity, had already, by and large, surrendered to it, had already, by and large, thought, well, we can play God's game by the devil's rules. We'll play the same game, take power out of the hands of the branches that actually the power was given to, and put it in the hands of unelected bureaucrats in black robes. But they'll be our unelected bureaucrats in black robes. All right. And really, from the Great Society to Obamacare, everything else that the left had done to the country successfully during that period of time came through judicial fiat, everything else. And so we got routed. We played judicial roulette. We all just grabbed red bandanas with every judicial opinion. We went to the table, spun the chamber and pointed it at the head, and we blew our brains out 9 times out of 10. For every 10% we won, we lost 9, okay? And lost ground on virtually every issue imaginable playing this way. And so there is way more long-standing tradition built in on the right, through institutions like Fox News, for example, in surrendering to this canard than pushing back, which is why, as far as I know, Bob, the only place where there's been even one remotely successful pushback against this is what we did in our home state of Iowa 15 years ago.
It is, without question. As a matter of fact, what it is Congress has failed to do their job. And
they're not even in session right now with all this going on. They're on a 2-week break.
They failed to do their job because they want to let the judicial branch do the job. Let the judicial branch take the heat. Executives, same way. They just keep You redefine the entire family structure of the country, and it's done by 9 unelected judges, or in Iowa, 7 unelected judges. And Steve, you have law schools for the past 50 years saying, we make law.
We determine our own jurisdiction.
Law. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're going in believing. Congress believes it. Trump now is becoming a disruptor to the system, saying, absolutely not. You do not do that. Matter of fact, when we went after those 3 judges, I won't name the name, but there's a legal scholar who said, you can't unseat 3 judges. You can't say that the legislature and the governor has the right to do what I was asking them to do. He came to me at a conference about 5 years later. He said, I've been thinking about this. If they would have done what you and I were telling them to do back in that day, we wouldn't be dealing with all this nonsense today if we would have held the court in check. And now what Trump needs to do is hold the court in check.
I don't see. So if we agree, the Russian collusion hoax wasn't going to stop itself. The independent counsel office wasn't just going to say, we're good here.
Sure.
They were going to have to be shut down, and they eventually were, right? Fauci and the healthcare bureaucracy was not going to stop itself. They weren't, okay? And look what happened, right? Okay. The judges aren't going to limit themselves, right? I mean, John Roberts has just already sent that memo out late last week. All right. We're not going to limit ourselves. All right. You can impeach a judge that's like impeaching a president. I looked it up. There's been 15 federal judges impeached all time. Okay. The last one was in 2010, and it was because the guy was already convicted of bribery. All right. It requires a 67 vote. It's just like impeachment of a president, a 67 vote threshold in the Senate. That process will take months, if not years. The amount of time that they will expend on all kinds of orders and injunctions and everything else will have lost so much ground by the time that's concerned. I know DeSantis wants them to do jurisdiction stripping, which means you can limit. You can say there's no judicial review of something. That's right in the Constitution.
Nancy Pelosi did that with Obamacare.
With Obamacare. But here's the thing: we can't even pass a budget, guys. We can't pass a tax cut. We're gonna jurisdiction strip. Listen, I love Ron DeSantis to death, but that's like saying, hey guys, first day of kindergarten, trigonometry, open your books. Never happening. If we can't even pass a budget, we can't get people on board for a tax cut, but they're going to strip the jurisdiction of the judges. Listen, I know it sucks, and it's not the way the system was meant to be, but here we are. It's the same thing as Trump's first term. Nothing good will happen unless he does it. Okay? Nothing good will happen. All the good stuff that happened his first term, he did it himself.
Yep.
All right? Same thing will have to happen here. The only person that's going to stop the judges will be Trump.
Is Donald Trump.
If he doesn't stop them, they will stop him. That's the choice. There's no other choice.
And what we said even back
Or am I wrong on that?
No, you are not wrong with that. So you put it back to Iowa. The Iowa legislature passed the Defense of Marriage Act, basically saying marriage between one man, one woman. And the governor signed it. You then get the judicial branch inserting itself going, you guys are wrong. We're going to redefine this institution on its own. That's where we said, no, the governor should issue his own executive order, say we're going to restore marriage between one man and one woman until the legislature either passes a law saying something different or the people vote on it. And so what Trump needs to do here is say, I'm going to insert my own branch, the executive branch. The judicial branch does not have this kind of power. So Congress and the president, you got Congress and the executive branch. What they should be doing is working together. They should be on the same team right now. The judicial branch is the one that's out of step here.
I don't see a way out here other than confrontation. Just let me give you some data points. Trump faced more universal injunctions in the month of February than the Biden presidency received its entire 4 years. This is the presidency that said you could not work at a business that had more than 100 employees unless you were coerced into being an onboarding human experiment for a toxic genetic serum. This is the same administration that said we're going to have wide open borders for drug mules and human traffickers and communists and terrorists. This is the same administration that weaponized the Department of Justice to go after not just its main political opposition, but right down to senior citizens praying at abortion clinics in Tennessee. All right, that administration, that one. Trump has faced more injunctions in February than they did their entire 4 years.
Because he's going against their game plan.
Correct. And their game plan, therefore, to respond is to use the judges to stop him. Trump has been president for 18% of the 21st century. He has been on the receiving end of nearly 70% of federal injunctions, despite that, and 92% of those were from Democrat-appointed justices. This is a judicial coup. They will stillborn his presidency faster than you can say Anthony Fauci, faster than you can say Russian collusion, unless they're stopped.
And that's why I think, the civics lesson, you said, bring them into kindergarten and say, here's trigonometry. Well, the civics lesson is here. Congress has the power of the purse. Congress is the one who gets to make the law. The president's got the power of the sword. He gets to execute the law. The judicial branch, if anything, was designed by the founders to be the weaker branch, not the most powerful branch. And we have ceded power forever to these guys to say you're the most powerful one. So Trump has got to be a disruptor in chief right now. And I think he needs to execute and continue marching on. What are they going to do to him? I mean, seriously, what are they going to do to the president if he says, you know what, I'm going to defy the order. I'm going to move forward anyhow. What are they going to do? They can't.
There's literally nothing they could do for the very reasons that they don't have the power to even have to make such an order.
Right. And so I think we've been,
By the way, in Marbury versus Madison, the case that established judicial review, do you guys know what John Marshall's order was against President Hamilton? There wasn't one because he knew he didn't have the power to do it.
Yeah.
That's why he didn't issue one. Yeah.
So I think what it is that this is a time for bold and courageous leadership. Trump has shown from day one, I know I need to take ground now. He cannot cede ground to the courts.
All right, I've got about 2 minutes here. If you had a private audience with the president for 5 minutes on this, what would you be telling him right now?
Let me take a 5-minute conversation to a 2-minute conversation. I like how you play. I think continue to do what you're doing. The people voted you in for border security, right? They wanted you to bring some basically level of operation here to the border versus the chaos that we're experiencing. So therefore, go ahead and be bold and courageous and make sure that it happens. Just like when I ran for governor and when you were on the WHO radio, when I said I'd issue an executive order on day one, I think he needs to continue to push through and make sure that Mike Johnson stays with him and John Thune stays with him. Because I guarantee you the people are with him. He's at some of his highest approval ratings right now. Mm-hmm. Keep pushing this thing through. I think the danger would be is to say we're going to cede more ground to the courts. Steve, we said for a long time that Trump has been good at exposing everybody. Well, right now he's exposing the judicial system.
Amen.
He needs to be a disruptor in chief at this point. And probably on a personal note, Steve, just coming back, we talked about this in team meeting. Yesterday I celebrated the 5th birthday of our granddaughter. And we looked back 5 years ago. And that's when we couldn't visit her in the hospital. We got introduced to her on the front porch and we had a tailgate looking at her. We have to make sure we don't go back to that kind of crazy again. And that means you need leaders that were elected, not leaders that were unelected.
I think the fight against the judges in Iowa probably isn't successful without you and I and the role we played in that process. And I think we learned some valuable insights from that experience. No other state had ever undertaken that fight before and then even been successful with it. I think we terraformed some ground, and I think there are some lessons that would be very useful to the Trump team to adhere based on our mistakes and successes. And so next hour, I'm going to open the hour by laying some of those out accordingly. So Bob, thank you very much.
Thank you. Love it.
You bet. Gentlemen, you have a quick thought on that conversation here before we get to the top of the hour break?
Yeah, if we haven't learned that we can't go back to normal on these matters, we deserve whatever chains are waiting for us on the other side of this judicial tyranny. I mean, honestly, connect the dots. It's we the people, and if you forsake that, they're going to rule you harshly.
Indeed, but the choice remains as it always has. They can just do things. We've seen that is possible. You can just disobey judges if they are ruling unconstitutionally, if they are not ruling in line with the law. If they're trying to shirk you can just disobey. It's just a matter of the will. Do you have the will to do that?
Amen. We're not a nation of laws, and we never have been. We're a nation of political will, and we always will be. Hour 2 is next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erz and Aaron McIntyre and all of you. And you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Take advantage of that by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And also, please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review wherever you podcast the show from. If you're one of our legions of podcast followers, we thank you. You guys are a big part of our program. Also, hit subscribe or follow if your podcast provider is iTunes. And that way, every time we do a new episode, it will show up in your feed every single time. Also, make sure, and thank you for all of you that have done that for us, too. Also, make sure before you sign up for that next life insurance policy, you check out our friends over at Select Quote, one of America's leading insurance brokers. Nearly 40 years of experience. They've helped over 2 million customers find over $700 billion with a B. $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Now, other life insurance brokers, they offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more while covering you less. Meanwhile, Select Quote's licensed insurance agents, they work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. And if you've ever wondered about getting coverage with a pre-existing condition, well, Select Quote partners with carriers that provide policies for a variety of those. So if you've got high blood pressure, no problem, diabetes, diabetes, that's fine too. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/Steve. Go to selectquote.com/Steve today to get started. That's selectquote.com/Steve. So we've been talking today about what I think is, at the very least, the first inflection point, tipping point of Trump's second term. And could very well be, depending on how this one is managed, the tipping point of Trump's term. Because just as we saw in Trump's first term, that two unelected bodies of bureaucrats were put forth to essentially be bulwarks against Trump's progress in the White House in order to give the Democratic Party, in the face of the spirit of the age, time to figure itself out, to regroup and get on the same page. And those two entities were the intelligence community, unelected bureaucrats within that, with permanent security clearances. They essentially were the authors of the Russia collusion hoax. When that was finally put down, and remember, that had to be put down. The Office of Independent Counsel just didn't shut down on its own. It had to be shut down. Evil never stops until it is stopped. Never forget that. Evil never stops until it is stopped. So that had to be shut down. That was shut down in the spring of 2019. After 2.5 calendar years of damage. Almost 2.5. Next, almost exactly a year later, came the scamdemic hoax. Unelected bureaucrats in the public healthcare sector. They were the stormtroopers for this one. That one was never shut down, and thus the Trump presidency was. Now you can see in that whom Trump has appointed to many of the policy positions dealing with the two departments and agencies and vectors of government where the previous two coup attempts came from. He learned some lessons from that. Well, now, the third time's the charm. And now it is another body of unelected bureaucrats, these ones carrying the title of judge in black robe. They are now the bulwark against Trump, as Russia collusion and the scamdemic was. They are both to nullify the results of the last election and also give Democrats time to get their act together to certify the results of the next election being the ones that they want. Let me repeat some of the data I just shared with Bob Vander Plaats last hour. President Trump faced more universal injunctions against his administration in the month of February alone than the entire Biden presidency did. The Biden presidency literally took the Constitution. That video Aaron had earlier of that dude just smearing his innards on a Tesla on camera, that's exactly what the Biden administration did to the Constitution in public. Can't work if you don't take a poison. Can't pray if you don't believe what we do. Can't live if you're anywhere close to a southern border. And yet in the month of February, the Trump administration faced more injunctions than the entire 4 years under Joe Biden. Furthermore, Trump has been president so far for 18% of the 21st century. He has already faced almost 70% of the injunctions. And 92% of those came from Democrats. Democrat-appointed justices. This is a judicial coup. This is coup 3.0. If the Russian collusion hoax was collusion 1.0, and the scamdemic was coup 2.0, this is coup 3.0. This is an attempt to stillborn Trump's second term like they successfully did his first. And this will be successful unless it is stopped. The scamdemic wasn't stopped, so it was successful. Russia collusion was stopped, so it wasn't. That's why they needed the scamdemic. Now in Iowa, the effort led by Bob Vander Plaats, myself, and a few others, as far as we know, that retention election of 2010 was the only successful fight ever waged against judicial tyranny. There are 4 key lessons we learned in this fight that I think the Trump administration would be wise to emulate so that the president can crush judicial tyranny and save his second term. Number 1, you have to realize that we are not arguing legal theory, so don't consult lawyers. That's what that means. Nor really even constitutional exegesis here. The people you're up against don't care about the Constitution. They hate it. They're defecating on it, shredding it, and laughing while they do it on camera. We are really arguing authority, and not even ultimately between the branches of government, but whether we still even have a government, quote, by the consent of the governed. Who really is sovereign in America? We the people or these the judges? Is any branch, especially the unelected one, above the will of the people? That's the real argument here. And the White House needs to cast the president as the champion of the people. If this is about legal theory or nitpicks and codicils of constitutional exegesis, they will succeed. If it is about the people, they won't. This is Sanballat and Tobiah begging Nehemiah to come down from the wall and let's have a conversation. And what's Nehemiah's response? I cannot come down. I am doing a very great work. And that should be the president's response. And frankly, one of the dumbest things he could do is go get a lawyer to argue this stuff. Even on our side, there's not many that truly get it. I love Ted Cruz to death. I went to work for Ted Cruz, okay? I once remember sitting in a room with a group of Iowa activists that I gathered for him during our caucus cycle when he told them out loud, I am a legal positivist. And he's about the best we've got, okay? So it's probably not going to come. You know, just like only Nixon could go to China. Only the guy that once donated to Al Sharpton and Planned Parenthood could get rid of DEI and Roe v. Wade. That's Trump, right? Okay. I can promise you, if we had the ability within the conservative legal community to undo judicial tyranny, we would have already done it. But much of the conservative legal community, frankly, profits off of this too, and wants it to continue because this is their vector to relevance. Very few people are in politics because they want to win on policy. Most people aren't Hamilton. Most people are Aaron Burr. Government exists to line my pockets. So does politics. So the messaging here is not going to come from the legal community. By the way, that's why Stephen Miller has been so good at this. Doesn't come out of the traditional conservative legal community. And so he's just arguing common sense. Well, is there anything that a judge could not? Or anything a judge could say we should do that we would say no to? There's nothing at all? Because someone who comes out of the conservative legal community is going to say, no, there's not. Because the courts determine their own jurisdiction. Unless they're Ann Coulter, who at her age has realized she has no future in the conservative legal community, so she's now speaking the truth. But 20 years ago, when I first started in this business, and brought Ann Coulter onto my show right as we're launching this fight against the judges, she was like, well, we can't tell the judges no. Well, 20 years ago, probably still thought she had a chance to work in the conservative legal community. You represent the people. They elected you. Be their champion. Number 2. If authority is the basis for this battle, the source of law is the substance of it. The Democrat judges reject the laws of nature and nature's God right out of our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, and they believe they are a law unto themselves. They're not just a Supreme Court, they fancy themselves to be a supreme being. Whatever they say goes and must be enforced, though they lack any native capacity to do so. No questions are to be asked either. That's the very essence of dictatorship. The one who came from the will of the people directly and is accountable directly to the will of the people is not the dictator. The side that did neither is, but then acts as if they are supreme. Ultimately, the law must be based on something. Something. So it'll be based on transcendent standards, immutable standards, inalienable rights, or whims and opinions. The men who signed the Declaration of Independence that pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honors, they were rebelling against that. In fact, it was abuse of the judiciary was actually the most often cited grievance they had in the long train of abuses against King George III. And so, no, they didn't pledge their lives, fortunes, and sacred honors against the whims of a tyrant to then just have to go up against the whims of an oligarchy. There's nothing free or liberty about that. The law has to be based on something. What will it be based on? Consensus, opinion? Well, that evolves. How do you know the opinion you have now you won't have later? Like when they say, well, the consensus of scientists believes something. Well, that's not an answer. The consensus of scientists didn't care that Coca-Cola used to have cocaine in it. The consensus of scientists thought it was crazy that Semmelweis thought we should start washing our hands so that we would reduce the amount of mortality in childbirth for women. The consensus of scientists thought Fleming was nuts, that we could find medications for molds, and then once we did, we should make them a free use so everyone could have access to them. The consensus of scientists thought your doctor was right to recommend his favorite cigarette brand. It's not a standard. That's an opinion. Your opinion's not a standard. It might become one if it's proven correct, but it inherently is not a standard unto itself. The law must be based on something. Something. So first point, who's in charge here? We the people or these the judges? Not even which of the branches. It's really about the people. Second point, the law has to be based on something. Okay, fine. You want the Supreme Court to ignore the painting of the Ten Commandments that sits there right in its own building as the predication of our law? Fine. Then what do you want it based on then? When Bob and I used to ask state Supreme Court justices these questions, they would fall apart. Number 3, it is vitally important to that end of what I just said. It is vitally important to draw them out into the open, to admit these things through direct confrontation. Because anybody who would ever consider voting for us for a nanosecond will be infuriated by the nauseating smugness of these elites. Draw them out. You want the confrontation. That's another reason, back to point 1, that's another reason why you're not going to get any help from the traditional legal community. Well, I might have a case in front of this judge in the future. I can't. Nope. You're not going to get, that's not going to happen. Beelzebub's not going to cast out Beelzebub. Take your ideologues like Stephen Miller and put them there like you are and draw them out. Make them say on camera, and that them include their media proxies. You have to defeat them first. See, that's what we did in Iowa. We defeated their media proxies first. They didn't want to come out. They didn't want to show their rear ends. They wanted to hide. But we routed them in the arena of ideas. So they had to put on, like Thanos, they had to put on the gauntlet and say, fine, I guess I have to do it myself. You want to draw them out. You want Stephen Miller saying that versus a retired Supreme Court justice on any corporate media platform you can. Force them to reveal their elitism, their smugness. That note from John Roberts last week is political gold, Jerry, gold. Shove that down the throats of the people. make them choke on it because they'll choke the elites with it instead because it's nauseating to them. Draw them out. Number 4, you need a galvanizing issue to give the people permission to defy the canard of the supremacy of the judges. And you need the people's current outrage. Listen to this very carefully now. The people's current outrage over a compelling cause must outweigh their long-standing cowardice. Let me say that again. The people's current outrage over a compelling cause must outweigh their long-standing cowardice. Now, I know this seems weird to say now, but 15 years ago, gay marriage was that kind of a galvanizing issue for our people. Now, when I used to message this across the state of Iowa, I would point out, if the marriage issue is not your thing, why wouldn't the same thing apply to the courts? Can just decide that we don't have a border. They can just decide, well, we are going to go to war. They can just do whatever they want then.
And they have.
And they have. I understand 15 years later, although the polling on gay marriage is going back into our favor again, I understand that it is not the galvanizing issue it was 15 years ago for people. But you know what is? Immigration is. And 15 years ago, it wasn't, actually. 15 years ago, there was an evangelical immigration study table funded by George Soros. And, I mean, even on the right, Daniel Horowitz got driven out of a major conservative platform 15 years ago. They called him a racist for having all the immigration views that pretty much the entire right now has. So what is that issue? What's that issue where the outrage over that issue? A great example, I just showed this last hour. Minor issue. But when I said, hey, some things are so paramount that we're just not going to go through a traditional process of giving it standing. Something as toxic to a culture as telling men they can just order DoorDash at home on installments. No, we're not. No, we're not going to do that. 100% not happening. As a culture, do not even allow that in. To me, I'm being somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but the principle's the same. That's an issue where my current outrage overwhelms my understanding and care for the complexities or my own cowardice. Immigration right now is that issue for us. It is very important you pick the right issue to push back on. Because people need to see you, again, if this is about who's in charge, the people or the judges will win. If it's about legal theories and complexities and codicils and exceptions, we'll lose. And generationally. We won't just lose this presidency. We will preemptively stillborn and eunuch our presidencies for the foreseeable future. So pick the right issue. Immigration's the right one. There's stories every day about the evils of this open border. All right, those are 4 lessons I think the Trump administration can learn from the success we had in Iowa, as far as I know. Still the only success the right has ever had in significantly pushing back on judicial tyranny. Todd and Aaron, I'll give you guys a minute to gather your thoughts and get to your take on things after I talk about our friends over at Patriot Mobile. You know, we're just talking about Iowa, my home state. And Bob and I and a few others on the cutting edge of pushing back against the courts 15 years ago. Well, our friends at Patriot Mobile, they've been on the cutting edge of pushing back on corporate wokeism for many years too. I mean, they are on the vanguard of the parallel economy. So if you want to switch to them today, and so you no longer have to give your money directly to companies who hate you, but give it instead to an outstanding American company with American values and a U.S.-based customer service team that works outstanding in catering as much as they possibly can, short of going broke, to your and your family's needs. All right, keep your number, switch your number, keep your phone, upgrade your phone. Whatever you want to do when you make the switch today, you get a free month of service with the promo code Steve when you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, a free month of service to get you started with the offer code Steve. When you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve, offer code Steve to get started with a free month of service at patriotmobile.com/Steve. All right, gentlemen, questions, comments, or insults?
Part 3 and 4 are crucial here, and it's not just one issue we can do this on. It's multiple issues, and Pete Hegseth showed this weekend. He gets it on transgenderism.
Yep.
He said, "Yeah, that's a nice ruling, Judge, on what I can't keep transgenders out of the military. I'll make sure I consult." I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "I make sure I'll consult you on troop deployments and training readiness." And yeah, just in the face. And then that, of course, how do you know you're over the target? Who came whining to the defense of the judge, David French? Mm-hmm. That's the game Steve is talking about. Out in the open, it's not about legal nuance. And hey, I know, folks, we're emotion-addled children, but in the movies, a lot of times the entire narrative, the entire Overton window is established in favor of the lie. And so part of the movie is this heroic speech or overturning of evidence or things like that causes people to, oh, I didn't know, I didn't see that way. And that's where the crescendo and the great music. It's not even that here. Guys, the polling on multiple issues shows America's just like, no, we already know what the truth is. Now we just want you to do it. Just do the thing.
Do the thing.
That's it.
Just do the thing.
Yes. And aggressively, unapologetically, roughly. Hey, there's a cheering section. We'd like this to go viral. The smacking around in the streets that maybe I don't have the courage to do, but we're ready for it. I've got the Karn popped. It's right there. You just have to do it. The light is green.
Yes. So I think Pete Hegseth over the weekend was a great example. Moving towards this moment of conflict and friction, and potentially disobeying, really just following your rightfully given and duly bestowed power. That's what we're talking about. Daniel Horowitz was great last week. Don't get rid of the language of defying courts. Okay, I think that's a really crucial point in messaging here. But in the interim period, before we get to that potential inflection point, mock, troll, and disrespect the out of these judges. That's what I think you should do. Mm-hmm. You have to do that. And Pete Hegseth did a great job of that over the weekend. Because these people really, I think that's going to be the fastest way to draw them out. Because these judges obviously see themselves as little small g God kings.
Yep.
That's how they see themselves. What kind of personality and soul sees themselves as God kings? The kind of personality that's just able to completely turn the other cheek as they're being mocked relentlessly day after day? No. That will draw them out. Secondly, I think there's two things I want to highlight here. Number one, the issue, the galvanizing issue. We've got it. It's right now. It's playing out. It's been in the news for the last week. This Judge Boasberg attempting to command planes to turn around as they are en route to El Salvador. It's already there. The issue is already here. It is at hand. That's good. That's a galvanizing issue. And these are all brutal gangbangers and really just domestic. They were just terrorists. Okay, so there's your issue. You're telling me, Steve, that you need to take this out of the illegal sphere, the conservative judicial sphere, the FedSoc types. You're telling me we need to get out of that, and it needs to be your ideologues. Mm-hmm. And you need your ideologues to browbeat, and you need your ideologues to message effectively. That sounds like something that would be right in the Trump administration's wheelhouse.
Correct.
Again, it all comes down to will. Do they have the will to do this? Because I think they have the opportunity and the ability in spades right now at the White House to bring this showdown to a head.
100%. And the lesson that we learned in Florida is that if you just take a page out of the Democratic playbook, again, short of what God says we can't do to win, we can do everything else. And by the way, what God says we can do to win, I can promise you, is a lot more cunning and shrewd than your nicer than God pastor in a sweater vest at your suburban megachurch is telling you.
For sure.
Can promise you that. A lot more cunning and shrewd. Okay? So short of disobeying God, we can do whatever else it takes to win. And there are some of their tactics we can adopt. Just do it. What they learned is we're just going to do what we want. And once it's in place, the ability to get rid of it or push back on it successful will be mitigated because people will just be used to it. Ron DeSantis expertly put this into practice in Florida the last 6 years. Just did stuff. Just did it. Could have defied Disney. We're just going to do it. We're just going to do the toughest abortion law. We're just going to do it. We're just going to do the best school choice bill in America. We're just going to do it. We're just going to do it. We're just going to do this stuff. We're just going to get rid of the crooked election chairman in Broward County. Just gone. We're just going to get rid of these Soros prosecutors. Just going to get rid of them. Going to do it. And once it's in place, now this is the new normal. You've reset what normal is. And you've made the other side look like the radicals here. And look what it did. It completely destabilized the Democratic Party in Florida. And that's how you go from almost electing a guy who got busted doing smack off the rear end of a homosexual hooker to the largest statewide win in Florida history with a guy with the most right-wing based governor we've ever seen. That's how it happens. So don't call a press conference. Don't say we're doing this. Come in tomorrow. Don't do any of that. Just do it. Just do it. Yeah, we're just not going to do that. And just do what you want. And by the way, I don't care if you go on just lying and just have Trump continue lying to the media. We're not going to disobey any orders from a federal judge. Just do it anyway. I don't care if you lie about it. Anybody care Corrie ten Boom lied about whether she was hiding Jews or not?
No.
Anybody care Rahab lied about whether she was hiding any Jews or not? No. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem with it at all. I don't. I think morally this rises to that occasion. I think that there is such grave evil, it's unworthy of honesty. Because you violate so much of the hierarchy of values before you get to don't bear false witness. You violate so many of the commandments before you get down to that one that it renders that one completely powerless. That's why no one was mad at Corrie ten Boom, and that's why no one was mad at Rahab. No one was mad at Boaz.
Forget about lying. We should be a lot closer to millstones than we are right now.
Correct. So I have no problem. I just keep putting the president out there. Now, of course we're not going to disobey an order and then just disobey it anyway. Just keep doing it. Just do it. No pronouncements, no showdowns, no we'll see at noon, 3 o'clock high, none of that. Just do it. Make that the new normal. Do the stuff people want and win. Just do it. Well, we have been anxious to be reunited with our old pal Naomi Wolf here on the show, so let's not delay it any further. Again, she's got it came out last fall. We are just now able to connect so we can discuss it. It's a very important work. The Pfizer Papers, Pfizer's Crimes Against Humanity, project she collaborated on, including with Steve Bannon and an outstanding team of researchers who went through all of the Pfizer documents. And Naomi, it is great to see you again. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. So let's start with the overall summation of what you and your team found over the course of many months that you spent going through Pfizer's documents. What's the biggest takeaway, do you think?
Sure. Well, for people who are unfamiliar with the project, I do want to kind of reprise what it is and why it's important. It's the result of a successful lawsuit by attorney Aaron Siri, and he got 450,000 documents ordered released, and these were internal Pfizer documents that were in the custody of the Food and Drug Administration. So Bannon and I both recognized as journalists that it was going to be very difficult to find out what was in these because they were so voluminous and so technical. So he prompted crowdsourcing by experts issuing reports. And so that's what we did. Amy Kelly, my COO, at Daily Cloud, is the project director, and she convened 3,250 doctors and scientists to read through these massive documents and issue what are now 109 reports showing what's inside of them. And unfortunately, what they reveal is the greatest crime against humanity in recorded history. And, I always say at this point, I say that advisedly as the granddaughter of a woman who lost 8 siblings in the Holocaust, just in terms of numbers and scale, the damages, the deaths, the injuries, the disabilities are worse. They're the worst in recorded history. Basically, some headlines. Pfizer knew within a month that the vaccines didn't work to stop COVID. Their language was failure of efficacy and vaccine failure. But so basically everything that followed, Steve, all the mandates, the lost jobs, the injuries, the deaths, the kids out of school if they weren't vaccinated, the two-tier society was based on a lie.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to kill grandma was based on a lie. The scare tactics of, you're more likely to die or be severely ill if you're not vaccinated. They knew that was a lie. The vaccines they didn't just not study transmission. Vaccines didn't work to stop COVID. The third most common side effect in the Pfizer papers is COVID. There's tens of thousands of horribly serious adverse events, not the chills, fever, that you were told about by the CDC as alleged side effects, but neurological events at industrial scale, dementias, Alzheimer's, strokes, paralysis, tremors. There are horrific, and we know now why, because the lipid nanoparticles degrade the myelin sheaths of the nervous system. There are horrific blood damage side effects, blood clots, lung clots, leg clots, a condition called thrombotic thrombocytopenia. And now we know why, because the lipid nanoparticles, which are actually even more deadly than the spike protein, though they got less attention, they coalesce in the blood. They create clotting. This is why people who are vaccinated have that pallor. This is why you get kids dropping dead, who are healthy. This is why there's heart damage, right? Also, the spike protein damage is the heart. Pfizer knew that there were 1,225 deaths, reported by doctors within the first 3 months of the rollout. Deaths, right? They knew that there's a report on kidney damage and liver damage and stroke, and half of the serious adverse events are within 48 hours of receiving the injection. So there's a cause effect there. There's a smoking gun. Pfizer knew that, the FDA, Dr. Walensky, the White House, we FOIA'd it, and we found that in April of 2021, they knew that they were injuring the hearts of healthy young adults, especially young adult males and teenagers. And instead of holding a press conference to warn the parents of America not to inject their healthy young adults, it shows all the way to the White House, they created a 17-page script to cover it up. It's fully redacted. And then what followed, as you remember, in the summer of 2021 was a huge influencer campaign of young influencers telling teenagers to get vaccinated. They knew they were going to kill young adults and cause heart damage. But the centerpiece, I could go on and on about the horrible adverse events and the horrible science. For instance, the only way Pfizer got to the claim that you're more likely to die or be hospitalized if you're not vaccinated was by hiding illegally the deaths of 8 people who died with COVID who were vaccinated. If they hadn't illegally hid those deaths, they would have had to report accurately that you're more likely to die or be hospitalized with COVID if you're vaccinated. But they covered that up. And now we're seeing this. Right now we're seeing the excess deaths are in the vaccinated. They knew that would happen. But Steve, the centerpiece of everything in the Pfizer documents is damage to human reproduction, damage to the ovaries. The lipid nanoparticles block the ovaries and cause menstrual problems, which is why I was deplatformed from Twitter and YouTube and attacked. It now turns out by the White House for accurately noting in June of 2021 that women were reporting menstrual damage. Well, Pfizer knew that they were causing menstrual damage. In fact, they've got a chart showing tens of thousands of women sustaining horrific menstrual damage. 10,000 women bleeding every day, 15,000 women bleeding twice a week. 7,500 women with no periods at all, meaning totally infertile. Women passing tissue, women hemorrhaging, 85-year-old women bleeding upon injection, 10-year-old girls bleeding upon injection. The menstrual damage is catastrophic. I just settled, I can't say for how much, but Elon Musk just paid me a large chunk of money as a settlement for deplatforming me, or for Twitter deplatforming me, because that was illegal, and what I was saying was true. And by deplatforming me 4 years ago, they were X and the White House and Facebook were causing horrific reproductive damage to millions of women who never got to hear what the risks were, and were now, infertile, or live births have dropped by 13 to 20% in Western Europe and North America. It damages the testes of unborn males, of baby boys in utero. It damages the placentas of pregnant women. The lipid nanoparticles stop the uterus from growing normally, or the placenta from growing normally. And so you have this epidemic of newborns premature, and the lipid nanoparticles create like a calcifications in the placenta that block oxygen and nutrients from getting to the baby. There's a section in Pfizer documents that shows an 80% miscarriage rate among vaccinated women. There's a section of the Pfizer documents that warns vaccinated men not to have intercourse with unvaccinated women, and if they do, to use two reliable forms of contraception. We don't know to this day what Pfizer was worried about in the semen of vaccinated men, but we have many anecdotal reports of women suffering a lot of injuries, like menstrual damage, from their vaccinated husbands or partners. The lipid nanoparticles, cause maternal mortality to rise 40% because women are hemorrhaging in childbirth. So it's back to childbirth being dangerous. The kinds of bleeding and infections and partial passing of placenta, which used to make childbirth a very risky time of a woman's life. Now the circumstances are back because of the damage done to women's reproduction and men's by the lipid nanoparticles. So I could go on, but what's very clear from the structure of the Pfizer documents is that, as they say in tech, this is not a bug, it's a feature. The injections were designed to cause the damage. An 8-page report summarizing the damage went to Dr. Walensky, Dr. Fauci, the White House. It's called the Pregnancy and Lactation Report. And they weren't showing damage that then led the White House to say, oh my God, we're making it impossible for people to reproduce in a healthy way. They showed the damage, and the White House just ramped up its rollout. So and I guess the other weird thing about the Pfizer documents is that, COVID is allegedly a respiratory infection, or it is a respiratory infection, but there's very little in the Pfizer papers about breathing or coughing or mucous membranes or nasal passages or, respiration, lungs. It's really centered on disrupting human reproduction. So and the last thing I'll say is about the babies. They knew that they were horribly injuring babies and killing babies. In the pregnancy and lactation report, it has 2 babies who die in utero, and Pfizer concludes it's due to, quote, maternal exposure, end quote, to the vaccine. And there's a chart, like the menstrual damage chart, there's a chart showing sick babies. There's, this many babies, they got sick nursing vaccinated moms because the lipid nanoparticles, the polyethylene glycol, which is a petroleum product, spike protein, are now in the breast milk of vaccinated moms. And breastfeeding has gone down from 34% to 14% of all moms. So very few babies are getting breastfed anymore. They can't tolerate it, right? So they're not getting those immunities. They're not getting that bonding. But also when they do nurse from vaccinated moms, they get very sick. So the chart shows this many babies vomiting, this many babies have swollen tissue, which is edema. This many babies are inconsolable. This many babies are feverish, and babies died. at least one baby died in a multi-organ system failure from nursing a vaccinated mom. So they knew that they were going to damage babies, through nursing and make it impossible for women to nurse their babies, which, by the way, makes women feel terrible, like inadequate mothers. And it really negatively affects the relationship between mom and baby when, baby just won't take mom's milk.
Mm-hmm.
It's a horrific attack on humanity.
That might be the greatest answer to a question I've heard in the history of this show. So that was incredible. Dreadful, but incredible. I've only got about 2 minutes left, so I've got time for one more question. Take the next 2 minutes, answer a simple question for us. Why?
Well, that's tough, right? Because the Pfizer documents don't show motivation. I'm inferring the motivation from the provenance of the injection. My own independent reporting showed that the Pfizer vaccine is manufactured in an MOU with China, and China produced 1 billion doses and then opened 14 manufacturing plants in Europe and 10 in the United States. So we're getting an injection, at least the Pfizer brand, we haven't seen Moderna, thank you, which is formulated, manufactured, distributed by our worst enemies who want us dead. And then there's the replacement of us, right? The 30 million people from tyrannical countries or failed states that were imported by the State Department and the UN. And you're seeing the same trend in Europe. So I think it's getting rid of the West. Yet, getting rid of people who remember human rights and democracy and equality, and bringing in, and they die and get sick and they're incapacitated, and bringing in people who are used to tyranny, so that there can be a globalist and a CCP integrated coup, essentially. That's my read.
Naomi, this was incredible. Thank you for all the great work you have done and continue to do on this story. It's greatly appreciated and admired. Good to see you. God bless you.
People to order. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you bet. Yeah, you bet.
Let people know where they can get the book, which is very important for supporting us. You can order the Pfizer Papers on Amazon, and please do, and share it. Give it to your doctor. Give it to your neighbors, your loved ones. Thank you, Steve.
You bet. 100%. Yes, it's on Amazon now. The Pfizer Papers, Pfizer's Crimes Against Humanity. The Pfizer Papers, Pfizer's Crimes Against Humanity. Thank you, Naomi Wolf. That was incredible. Gentlemen, your thoughts before we close this out today?
At the end, where she's talking about why, the answer, human rights, it's not just the rights aspect of that, blur whatever that means, but also human. This and transgenderism are ultimately doing the exact same thing, trying to make the answers to those two basic things so utterly chaotic that this future that many people have dreamed up, where humanity is a widget at best, it's just go time, because we don't know what to defend when it comes to human or rights. It's to make both of those terms utterly meaningless, and thus, in their eyes, our lives meaningless, and they can play with us and do with us whatever they want.
Aaron?
Regardless of what the intention was here, whether it was just intention not necessarily coordinated, or intention because all of these people have the same master, wink, wink. Evil was done. Regardless of what the intent, what the coordination, evil was done. And so the response to that is what? If we don't want it to be done again, guess what has to happen? Accountability, examples, sending a message, a very clear message. For this and future generations, don't ever try to pull this again. I hope and pray that we, somewhere, there's a people within us that has an appetite for that. But I'm not holding my breath because it's been 5 years.
RFK Jr.'s spokeswoman at HHS put out a post over the weekend on Twitter saying, hey, what would you like our priorities to be? And I responded with 3. Number 1, remove all mRNA products off of the market. And I put them in this order on purpose. Number 2, ban all big pharmaceutical advertising in the media. We're one of the only countries left in the world that still permits this, okay? Because they essentially act as government endorsements. Number 3, once you've done those two things, then no more funding or approval for any future mRNA technologies until a full vetting of these very first ones is completed. Why they failed, what went wrong, etc. I think all 3 of those things are achievable, reasonable. I know some of you would want the liability repealed. He can't do that. I mean, that's a congressional statute. So Congress would have to repeal that act, okay? But those 3 things are things that he could do. And I think they line up completely with what his stated beliefs on these issues were for decades before I was frankly even aware of them. We're going to do overtime for subscribers. Stick around for that. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, Romans 8:28.